Val Humble, present. The minutes of the meeting are being kept by video recording. Karen, would you like to register your presence?
Oh, Karen Myers present.
Eric?
Here.
And let's see, Kathy indicated she's going to call in.
Any other? Yes. Right. That does give us a quorum, so we're in order and ready to conduct business. I guess first order of business on the agenda is the levy grant contract.
Thanks. Hi, Colin Rowan, Director of Planning and Public Affairs, and I'm going to weave together three brief updates into the levy contract update. So they're all related. The first is big news coming out of Washington, D.C. at the end of December about project authorization and appropriations. The second is an update in the next steps for the levy grant financing contract that you had in your board packet. And the third is action in the 2023 legislative session happening in Salem, introducing two bills to replenish that levy grant fund. So let me get started and I'll answer any questions that you might have. So first, in very exciting news, I think early in January, you received an email from Wendy summarizing some of this news, but as part of the Water Resources Development Act of 2022, the Portland Metro Levy System study that we have with the Army Corps of Engineers received congressional authorization. So that construction authorization is the federal government, an act of Congress, saying that this project should be built and instructing the Army Corps of Engineers to include it in their work plan and to move it into the design and then to the construction phase. So this is a really big hurdle to get over. The authorization is really Congress saying we want to see this project completed. That was included in the National Defense Authorization Act, and we were one of 6 flood safety projects nationwide that was that received that construction authorization. So that is a lot of work from many of you, our different partner organizations, and our Oregon delegation to Congress. So a lot of thanks are in order all around, and also worth celebrating. Pretty huge. The other piece is what's happening for this current fiscal year, federal fiscal year, which was in the large appropriations omnibus bill in the water and energy appropriations. There was $3.77 million appropriated to the Army Corps of Engineers for this pre-construction engineering design phase of the Portland Metro Levy System study. So that is the first year federal contribution to doing the design phase. We will need to continue advocating for annual appropriations, but because of not only being an authorized construction project, but also receiving this first appropriations, we are in a really good place to receive those annual appropriations. So also very much worth celebrating. The 3.77 million represents the federal share, which is 65%, and our local share for the construction and design phase is 35%. We've presented in the past about how we are securing Oregon State through the Infrastructure Finance Authority's Special Public Works Fund levy grant funding to secure the 35, or at least 80% of the 35%, there's some math to do there, but our local contribution. And so in, I believe, September or October, we presented to the board about receiving approval from the IFA board, Infrastructure Finance Authority board, awarding us the contracts. Since then, we've actually received the contracts. Those were included in your packet. There's no action on that at this point. We wanted to have that in front of you. We have a couple clarifying questions with Business Oregon that we'll take care of in the next month, but in general, the contracts look really good, terms look good, and we'll be bringing a resolution to the boards in February. Armand has been working on those from the legal team, as well as having a review from Hong, and we've also included the finance team. Lori, Janet, and Angel have all been a part of those conversations. So really want to thank the support of our legal and finance team for reviewing everything and making sure that we're in good order. So next meeting that you all will have in February, we plan to bring a resolution that will give approval to your board chair to sign the contract. Once we have, once we go into negotiation with the Army Corps of Engineers for the design agreement that we'll have with them, then we'll also be coming back to the boards for a cost sharing agreement. And so that will be contingent on the terms of our design phase contract that we'll have with the Army Corps. That cost sharing agreement was a term that was included in the resolution that you all approved in February of last year, which instructed us to apply for these levy grants. And so we'll actually, and maybe I'll just turn it over to Armand to provide any more detail, both on the resolution or on that IGA.
Thanks, Colin. No, that's about right. Last year, each district board had essentially agreed to share equally in the design phase cost that we're going to split equally between the districts, contingent on a few things happening. First and foremost, receiving these grant funds that are before you now, at least briefing on them. And then two, entering a cost allocation agreement between each of the districts. And we hope to have that cost allocation agreement for this board's review in the next few months, once we receive the design agreement from the Corps, which we're anticipating around that same time.
Thanks, Armand. Yeah, I'll pause here before just giving a quick update on the 23 legislative session. Eric, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so in the event that the Army Corps of Engineers experiences an overrun on the PED, who pays for that? Do we have any liability?
Yes, we do. So any of the cost overruns, we will have a percentage share of it. We do have some cost controls in place. And the number that we currently are using, that the Army Corps uses, has a 25% contingency built into it. Of course, as you know, construction and all, because of inflation and cost of construction, design part of construction has definitely gone up, but there is a 25% contingency built in, and we'll be clearly communicating any of those changes with the boards as we move forward.
So are we able to go back to Business Oregon for 80% of the cost, if there is a cost overrun? Can we go back to Business Oregon and get additional funding from them?
That is a great question, and the answer is yes. They asked us to apply for the full amount. So originally we were just going to apply for 2 years, the first 2 years of the 3.5-year PED phase. They asked us to include the full 3.5 years, and there's a recognition that conditions change over those years. We would need to go through the same process of doing a pre-application, going in front of their board and making those adjustments. But yes, it's not a closed door. There's additional funding, and that relates to the next update, which I can just do quickly, that we have worked with our contract lobbyist, Mark Landauer, who has worked with local state representatives and senators to introduce 2 bills to replenish another $15 million into that statewide levy grant fund. And so Representatives Hudson and Nelson are co-sponsoring HB 2307, and Senators Gorsuch and Frederick are co-sponsoring SB 634. And so that will put another $15 million into the fund. It's statewide. 60% of that fund needs to go to rural or disadvantaged communities. 40% is available for basically our drainage districts plus small sections. There's drainage or there's levee systems that are just outside of Salem and Kaiser and outside of Eugene and Springfield. So yeah, we will continue to advocate statewide to make sure that people know that these funds are available. Continue to highlight to the state legislature and others just how much need for these funds is required statewide. So this helps a lot of levee operators throughout the state, but it also helps us, and will be, the plan is to have this fund continue and possibly grow, but to have this as a continuing grant fund as all these different operators around the state try to modernize their systems. Val, I think you were next, and then Mary Helen.
Yes, I hope this is a minor confusion. All of the language in that contract about all of the vetting we have to do with contractors made me uneasy. Is the Army Corps going to be our only contractor, or are they going to be in charge of the entire PED, and we won't really be hiring anybody else?
That's a great question. We actually won't be hiring anyone. And so it's still worthwhile. There was a couple questions around, there's a requirement for qualified engineers, the engineers that will be working on it either as contractors to the Corps or on the Portland District team are registered engineers in the state of Oregon. But we actually, the contract itself, the design agreement is our sort of direct connection to the Army Corps, and then any of the contractors that they will have will be federal contracts through them and not through us.
Thank you.
Mary Helen?
I need to get a little more simple, or just to make sure that I understand correctly. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers now, because the memo that came out that said that the president had put it in his budget, but the budget's not been approved yet. Or do they have the funding now, or they've just been allowed to apply for funding? And do the Business Oregon grants involve already say we're going to give you this amount of money, or are we in a position to apply, or they've given us permission to apply for the funding?
Thanks for those questions, Mary Helen. So for the first question, we have the funding has been appropriated for the Army Corps. And so that was an update, and it was in an email that I think Wendy sent out on January 6th that noted that in the appropriations omnibus bill that passed, I think like December 23rd at the stroke of midnight kind of thing, 3.77 million was appropriated. The Army Corps was funded to move forward with PED. So that's what the Army Corps needs.
For our project, or for those 5 projects that had been approved? Because I thought I understood that there was 5 projects that they were approved to get funding for in that amount of money.
No, so there's
Okay.
2 separate things going on, at least related to Washington, D.C. There were 6 projects nationwide that received
Well, we're 6.
construction authorizations. We were one of 6. And so that's really the Army Corps saying, or sorry, that's the Congress saying, build this project. It's telling the Army Corps to move forward with it, to include it in their work plan, to fund the design and then the construction of it. So that was one part. And then the appropriations is, it's the annual budget. So we did receive that appropriation from Congress to fund the Army Corps to begin the design phase. So that is money that will reach in sometime, crystal ball, so not exactly sure, but sometime in the next month or so, that money should land in Portland District. They already have their own project manager, sort of design team identified. They'll be able to engage that once they have that money. They won't do that until they have that money, and they'll engage with us and begin the design agreement. Your second question was on the funding or the contract for funding through Business Oregon. Business Oregon has already approved the full request for all 4 of the drainage districts. It is a matter of us signing the contract with them. And so that will be in front of your board in February, a resolution directing Val as the chair of your board to sign the contract.
Okay, and I guess just because I'm a skeptic is why I asked that first question, because as we know, a lot of things have changed since September, and all the threats of the country, raising the debt ceiling, going bankrupt, all of those kinds of political things that are going on. Is there any indication that that would affect this funding? So if the new Congress and Senate decide they aren't going to fund the things that have already been funded, which, as I understand it, can happen, is there, I guess, what are your thoughts on that? Or am I just being overly skeptical of crazy politicians?
No, I mean, it's fair to be skeptical. It's always healthy, right? So there is, so the funding, the appropriation is set. So that money is heading where it needs to go, which will fund the work. Maybe there's some scenario where government closes or government employees are told not to report to work. So that maybe that I'm trying to come up with a scenario, but that money is appropriated, and so it is on its way to Portland District to begin that. But always healthy skepticism is always good.
Okay, yeah, I'm usually a Pollyanna on things, but this one's like, I don't want to hear, well, this has never happened before, because so many of those things have happened. So that's why I keep asking those kinds of questions. But thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, yeah, there's obviously things that are outside of our control, but things that are within our control, I think we're in a really good place. There's been a lot of work by a lot of people that should be recognized. And so, yeah, but there's always things outside our control, but I think we should feel pretty good about where we are.
Thank you, Colin. Is that it?
Yes, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have operations update with Randy. Hi, Randy.
Hey, how's it going? It's been a while since I've seen everybody here. So thank you so much for having me. You guys are just the neighbors to the west right here of the office. So Wendy's gonna help me out with a little spreadsheet here or PowerPoint. And if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. I guess the big thing I think that most people are interested in, we just had a really big ice storm / rainstorm. So major ice and then followed it with a lot of rain. So we saw 4+ inches of rain in 2 days. And some of the big pulses over a short period of time were pretty intense. I'd say overall, the system functioned really well. 13th Street pump station just behind Fazio's property, or on Fazio's property, Anthony Fazio's property. We ran into a little bit of issues as monitoring the system remotely. There was quite a few intermittent power outages. So that really took just time for me to just basically not go to sleep very much and keep resetting that and being in communication with the power company. But they weren't long, but just those quick 15-minute power outages until we get it up and running again. You'd see the water rush up 6-10 inches in no time. So for the most part, they were running great. And when it was going, it was able to keep up. And no areas really in any in any trouble, but there was just a lot of effort on the back end, just keeping that thing going. And right as that rainstorm came to an end, our PLC, kind of the brain that works with the pumps and our SCADA and all that, that actually went out. And so luckily that did not happen during that event, or that's a scenario where we would have had to have a person or two there full time, because we can only operate those manually and cannot do it remotely. So that didn't happen, but it functioned well, but there was a little bit of little bumps in the road along the way, but everybody stayed dry, and that's really good. And really a really good report from the Schmear Road pump station during that rain event. We didn't have one issue. You know, there's a lot of development, other things that have been going on the last couple of years, and this is a big rain, and that pump station was able to keep up, and it operated really well. That amount of rain though, with a major power outage or something, that's really when we can get into some trouble, and it did not happen, and very happy about that. So and then too, the operations team, you know, working up to that event, we spent a lot of time out there in Pen 2, clearing some logs and dams and just putting everything into pre-storm. And I think everybody knows we have different settings on our pumps about where we turn them on and off at. And when we're prepping for a storm, we put those in pre-storm, which drops at a good foot, depending on the pump station, foot and a half lower to create some storage in the ditch system. So did that, a lot of work with the excavator and the team being out there and just get everything prepped, and it functioned really well. But this definitely was a lot of water, and we had basically zero issues. But in that type of scenario, like a long-term power outage is where we could have seen some issues if just for reference, and like a storm of this size. And the 4+ inches in 48 hours, the math kind of came back. This is about a 5-year storm is what was estimated, but probably the most rain I've seen in a short period in my 6 years here. So does anybody have any questions about that or how that functioned? Go ahead, Val, what do you got?
Just an observation that the ditch north of Gertz seems to have some beginning beaver dams running in it. You might have, you know, the next week or so, take a look at that and see if that needs clearing out.
Yeah, no, that's constant maintenance up there. There's always beaver activity, and we spent a lot of time in there before this rainstorm. But we pull them, they build them. We pull them, they build them, and part of the game, unfortunately. But thank you for the heads up. What do you got a question, Eric?
I do, yeah. Busy as a beaver sometimes is not exactly what you want to hear, is it?
Well, this is when we're really busy for sure. Prepping, during, and in post for sure. So
okay, so just a couple of things for us to keep in mind as we think about this. First of all, thank you so much for the update. You guys did a fantastic job. And thanks again for alerting us to the need for continuous power during one of these events. And so once every 5 years, we can reasonably expect to get 4+ inches in this period of time. And I was really struck by the sense that if you had a 15-minute outage, as we did in December, the water can rise 6 to 10 inches. So a longer than 15-minute really is kind of concerning to me. So how long a power outage can we stand before we're in emergency mode?
you know, I don't have the exact answer to that. It depends. It depends on the storms, and generally we're not seeing major big amounts of rain more than about 48 hours generally, and that's kind of like what we expect. You don't see it jump into the 3-4 day range. If it's raining hard like it was, you know, if you got power out for 12 hours,
Yeah.
I mean, water's really going to be infiltrating a lot, like getting way out of those banks, and you know, all throughout the system it's different, but we can't handle that in those large rain events, our power being down that long. And I can't be specific, I can't say 2 hours, 6 hours. It depends. Depends on when that power outage happens, how much storage do we have? Is this happening at the tail end when the system's full and the pumps are barely being able to keep up? So that range is going to vary. But yeah, a power outage, anything past a few hours and something like this, is going to cause some operational issues for sure.
Okay, so this is, again, pretty important for us to understand, particularly given the kind of Pineapple Express that Northern California has been hit with. Didn't come to us, but this is fair warning that we really need to look at what happened in Sacramento with the American rivers and the levees there, just to say, yeah, this is real, and start to alert both our political allies and the citizens that we need to do something major for these rain events. So
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off.
no, go ahead.
No, I'll just bring it back to, it depends on the time of the year when these type of rain events hit, right? So this is purely an internal drainage event, right? So external levee pressure, nothing like that existed during this time. Now there could be the perfect storm in April or May or something. But so luckily we didn't have to deal with that. But this is purely about how do we get this water out of here? And it's those 2 pump stations in Penn 2 that are very critical. And yeah, I guess that's my point.
Got it. Okay.
But you're right, support and recognition and all that support for all the aspects of our system is critical. But this was purely just inside the levee this time. And I'm really proud of everything worked great. Our team worked really hard. But I guess I don't want to stress people out or anything, but this type of, it's critical that our system is functioning at 100%, or else we can't keep up. And there's stuff, waters will rise a bit, and potentially some properties would see some water. So, and I don't know, it just could happen. And it's just I'm making the point how important it is.
And Supervisor Molander, thank you. I raised my hand to just say exactly what you did. I appreciate you saying it.
Well, Randy, I also want to thank you for your sleepless nights, because I think it's above and beyond your service to our citizens, because yours and your teams and everything you did in all your extra hours when you could have been home, dry, safe, all of those kinds of things. I really appreciate that. And I know everybody does as well, because I'm one that says that people value being able to stay dry. And they even get excited when they see the ditch along a Fazio property get water in it. I mean, not that it even goes up to the sides, or that there are ducks on the big cross levee pond. It's like, oh my God, the water's really high. Is it going to flood? And you guys alleviate all those fears in people. And nobody says that much anymore. So great job. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary Helen. But I would push back a little bit. This is my job, and we don't have to do it every time, but definitely totally willing to and proud to be a part of helping out the Penn 2 community. So thank you. Next slide, please, Wendy. We'll just touch a little bit on maintenance. This, I think I only had 10 minutes, and I'm killing the time here, but still maintaining those bi-weekly ditch inspections, cleaning culverts, hitting both those pump stations, oiling, greasing, running, and just making sure everything's in tip-top shape. And that's happening at least twice a week, and these rain events are out there every day, but always twice a week, no matter what the weather is. We had a lot of storm recovery from that event with the ice, wind, and rain. A lot of pulling logs out. Charles Crisp in this photo, he's chainsawing up a log. We got an excavator you can't see winching out. A lot of that type of work taking place in Penn 2 after this event, and constantly, just working with and not against those beavers. So, we're just keeping water flowing the best we can. And it's like, I think Val mentioned about the beaver activity. There's skirts, there's a handful of locations throughout Penn 2. There's a lot of beavers in there. We stay on top of it though. We had a fence repair across from the Schmear pump station. They're kind of in between the levee and where our relief wells are. basically directly across from the pump station. Had a contractor come in, put up a new fencing. There was a lot of vandalism and with some of those houses, communities that used to be there. So that's looking all nice and well again. And just one other thing to note, we've been working with BES right on off of Gertz, and there's like a little almost cul-de-sac right by Fazio's corn maze right there. There's a drain line that dumps into Fazio's ditch, and they were having some issues is backing up in that little roundabout or whatever you want to call it is was flooding underwater. So they came out, located it, and we're looking into potentially working with BES, and through some initial investigation, there's really not good grade or fall to that from that section down to the main conveyance down further. And so in the future, there might be a little maintenance, a little small dredging, removing a little bit of material to just maximize flow in that area. So no action item yet, but just we have been doing some initial legwork and just wanted to let you know about it. Next slide, please. And I coined this one, areas of interest. Just something to note, there's a lot going on in Penn 2, and one is there's a big development. I think Amazon's coming in right next to our pump station at Schmear, and they've got a lot of material. They're moving around, and they were obviously seeing some flooding during this rain, and they kind of diverted they were trying to get their stuff drained. So they diverted it basically into our parking lot and access space. And we showed up one morning and it looked like this in the photo. Fortunately, Bill reached out to that contractor immediately, and it was impressive to actually turn around in response, and they shored all that back up. And there was no damage, but yeah, just with all this development, I thought this would be of interest to the board that, these developments can have an effect just even on in different ways we don't think about. And also, MCDD staff, we're hiring, and we got a lot of hiring. We got Steve Luna, who worked for us for 23 years. Tomorrow's his last day. We've got an opening on the O&M tech side, and also we're going to be hiring for 2 seasonals. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Everybody's got a social circle and people out there. So pointing towards our website soon. And hopefully these positions are posted by the end of this week. And yeah, we're hoping to get some more great employees here. So anybody got any questions? Concerns? All right. Well, I'm excited. I feel like out of all the boards, I know everybody on this board, and it's been a while, but it's always a pleasure. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you.
Thank you, Randy.
Appreciate all your work and the team's work, Randy.
Next on our agenda, we have some orientation for the budget.
Yes, let me share my screen. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get started. So today's the first in a series of discussions that we'll be having related to the Penn 2 budget for the upcoming fiscal year. I know it's hard to believe, it feels like we just finished the last one and we're right back into this one. So we'll take a look at the budget calendar first to give you a sense of our next steps in the process. We'll also be looking at the forecast for the current fiscal year. The forecast process is an essential part of our budget process because it informs our estimates of project budgets that need to be carried forward for the next year, carry forward fund balances that will provide funding for next year's budget, and give us a sense of spending patterns so that we can make some decisions on spending for the upcoming budget process. We'll also share with you the current MCDD staffing levels so that you're aware of where we're at in the staffing. And finally, we'll take a little bit of a look at the planning process for the upcoming budget. We've got a draft list of budget priorities that we would like to share with you and get your feedback, and also just looking for some initial guidance on possible increases to assessment rates for the upcoming year. So this is our budget calendar showing the key dates in the upcoming budget process. We're at step 1 here on the calendar, with this presentation being the kickoff of the budget season and our review of the current year forecast. We'll be updating that forecast as we get closer to the approved budget to ensure that we're on track to provide the level of fund balance carry forward that we're currently projecting. Staff are working diligently on their department budgets for each district as we speak, and these efforts will be consolidated into a budget proposal for you to review. In April, we'll be bringing that proposed budget for you to review and discuss. In May, we'll bring back any updates that you request for the proposed budget and ask you to consider the updated version for approval. And in June, you'll adopt the budget so that we can utilize those funds as we begin operating on July 1st. So in your package, you'll find a detailed version of the forecasted financial results for the current fiscal year. And this is just a summary of that forecast. Assessment revenue is projected to be about $60,000 higher than budget. That's good news. This is due to an improvement in the compression rate in this district, which was close to 20% last year and came in at 13.6% this year. Materials and services are projected to be $129,000 lower than budget, with positive variance in legal of $65,000 that will need to be considered for carryover into the upcoming fiscal year due to the timing of the legal work related to the transition to the urban district. Capital outlay has a positive variance due to timing of projects, with the PMLS project and SCADA system upgrades identified for potential carryover into fiscal year 23-24. And the ending fund balance is about $700,000 higher than budget, but you'll see on future slides that we anticipate most of this positive variance will land and carry forward capital commitments. So it's not money that we have available to spend on other operations. So this is a summary of our forecast capital outlay. And you can see that there's some timing differences anticipated to result in about $550,000 of carry forward into the upcoming budget. Portion of that may be grant related, so you may see both the grant revenue and the spending reduced as we start to take a closer look at that forecast before we come back with versions of the budget. But we'll continue that refinement and make sure that we get that as close as possible as we get closer to the approved budget. This slide shows our projected fiscal year ending fund balances. The pie chart shows the allocation of that balance, with 43% of the funds being restricted for capital spending, keeping in mind that we may have to do some adjustments to that capital fund balance if we are looking at grant related funds and see that we're not going to be spending those funds. Moving to the bar chart at the right, you can see the comparison of our projected fund balances by category to the last 2 years worth of audited balances. You can see that the operating reserve and the undesignated fund balance are holding steady. And what we want to talk about as we start to look at next year's budget is whether the board wants to consider drawing down on a portion of those reserves as we move forward to the transition to the urban district. This slide shows the level of staffing in the current year budget by category at MCDD. The chart on the bottom shows the detail by department. So currently we have 4 open positions that will be posted in the upcoming weeks. Some of them have already been posted actually on our newly implemented automated HR system, including an engineering position. We've got those 2 operations positions that Randy discussed and a position in public affairs. So the key
just to stress for the board, sorry, Larry, these are vacant FTEs that were already in the budget. These are not
already in the budget, just open.
They're not new people, they're transitions.
Nope. They're replacements. I should have explained that better. Thanks. So the key takeaways from our financial projections for Pen 2 are detailed here. We've got some decisions to make about assessment rate increases. We implemented a 10% increase in rate last year and experienced improvements in compression. We'll need the board's direction on rate increases for the upcoming year. And also we'll need to talk about your ideas around drawing down on an operating fund balance and whether you want to move forward with that. In capital projects, staff are pulling together the CIP for the upcoming year, and we'll also have some carry forward projects from the current year budget. So this slide is a draft proposed budget priority list for the upcoming year. And we did get a recommendation just today to move item number 2 up to being item number 1, which we thought really made a lot of sense. So I'm going to start there with our employees being really at the top of the list, keeping our operations going and providing flood protection for our district. Their safety is of the utmost importance and should continue to be our top priority. Then if you go second in line, that is meeting our core mission of flood protection and prevention. Particularly, I think, as Eric noted, the impact of that weather-related flooding to our south in California, it makes that mission even more critical in our situation as well. Getting that urban district up and running in order to address funding issues and streamline governance to allow further support of all of those millions of dollars of capital support that we're poised to receive is also a priority. And that leads to the advancement of the PMLS and FEMA capital projects. And finally, providing adequate support services to allow for compliance is our final priority. So with that, I'm going to pull down my screen and I can take any questions and also feedback both on assessment rates and how we want to look at that this year, capital fund balance drawdowns, and those budget priorities. It looks like you have a question, Mary Helen.
I always have a question. That's
okay.
why my t-shirt says Axolatus. The last slide that you showed about the budget priorities, was that in our packet?
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay. Then
all the slides are in there. So
somehow my printer missed it because I printed all like whatever 80 pages of it to just so I could follow.
Sorry,
along.
I always have a big stack. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then the point that you made that it was requested that the second item become the first. I think they're all important. So I don't know that 1, 2, or 3, because you can't do 1 without 2, and you can't do 2 without 1. So I guess I don't know who the we or who requested that, but if we could somehow, I'd like to kind of change the phraseology. Is like, these are the important things we need to accomplish, because there's a lot of, all those items are very important. And if we're going to say priorities, I think they're, well, and maybe my fellow supervisors won't feel the same way, but I don't think we could do one without the other, or say one's more important, because we can't protect the employees if we don't have flood safety. So that was just kind of a comment on that. And I don't know who decided that they should be 1, 2, or 3. I liked how you didn't list them 1, 2, or 3. That they were just on the page and important things we need to accomplish that we can communicate. This is our priorities.
I think that's a great point. And maybe I just need to change the picture so that it's like around the page instead of looking like it's a list in priority order.
Yeah, like big pie shaped things.
Yeah, maybe I'll make a pie chart.
Yeah,
what do you think about
piece
that?
of the pie out, somebody else doesn't get that piece.
Thank you, Mary Helen. I think that's a really good point. Eric?
Are there specific employee safety issues where you're looking for us to add additional funding for the upcoming budget year?
Jim, do you want to take that one?
I think we're still in the early planning phases. We're looking, I don't know that there are specific ones in Pen 2. We're looking for improved cameras at Pump Station 4. There are a few more vaults that need to be installed to protect safety when crews are doing their raking. And if Bill Owen were here, he had an unfortunate death in his family, so he's out today. But he has probably a better idea of some of the specific investments. The other dollars that we'll probably want to have available to us would be to continue to provide security services for staff and campus. We've been able to reduce those costs quite substantially due to an improvement in conditions, but we're all, I'll take a page from Mary Helen, we're all skeptical that those will potentially sustain themselves as the weather warmed. So we'd like to have access to enough revenue to protect our assets. Those are a few that I know about. There's, I think there's a fall protection improvement that we can make as well. So a few things like that. We have the new barge coming, which will be much better. So again, we have OSHA report and a private security consultant report that I think Bill and the operations team are still evaluating. So a few more things that will come up through the budget.
Got it.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
I have some just to kind of add to that, about the houseless coalition, that's going on between any number of people and the funding that's available there. If there's staff, and I think you answered that in my list of questions, but just to kind of reiterate, staff is working with those people to provide safety so that we can rely on the Portland Police or Multnomah County Sheriffs or whoever has jurisdiction over the land, because we don't own any of the land. But I would, and I've said this, I'd support it, but probably not at the level of creating our own program, but utilize those services, because all of those people have gotten a whack of money in the last 6 months. And now Governor Kotek is like laser focused on providing services. And so if we can, I'm not going to say get our hand in the pot, but reduce our expense and use those, and not to get into political stuff, but the Joint Office of Household Services is a big target for any number of government agencies because of their inadequate ability to coordinate services. And so I think there'll be some changes there. So I think that will take some staff time to be able to keep an eye on the political swirlings that will go around that. But I'm optimistic in my small role in all of that is that Governor Kotek and her staff and Commissioner Jayapal and Commissioner Ryan will straighten things out. But it might, like all good politics, it might take a while.
And just a quick specific update. We have Bill and our operations team meeting with our public agency partners with land ownership along the levee system. We are in the initial phases of trying to create a shared approach to access control. So again, trying to keep vehicles off. And then Colin's got the laboring, or currently we're working with the Port and Metro, who own a lot of property in the area, to draft requests to the city of Portland and Multnomah County for increased financial and security and social service support in the area. So again, that's coming, but slowly, but we're trying to get it right. And I guess the thing I want to make sure this board hears is that we have seen a real increase in support and action from our partner agencies in the area. And I think that's why you're seeing some progress getting made. So I don't want you to think they're not helping. They're doing everything they can. And we're trying to organize that to the degree that we can pull things together. So thank you for keeping an eye on it.
Well, and the Safe Rest Village that they want to put at Sunderland is, a nightmare in and of itself, but it also affects bordering properties that are in Penn 2, as well as, the Columbia Edgewater Golf Course. And so they're quite involved, and that group has been made aware of great progress, and NCDD's been a part of those conversations as well. So I think with a change in command of commissioners and who's paying attention, it will only benefit our protection. I hope. I mean, again, I'm going back to the Pollyanna skeptic. I can't be both, but I try to be that split personality. So I think there's a good opportunity to be a skeptic.
Val, did you have a question?
Actually, just a little update apropos Eric's question about employee safety. We do have in Penn 2 a capital improvement project on fall protection on a ditch, on a culvert on 6th, sort of across from the school bus parking lot. Just we need to be aware of that will be coming up. It will be done at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So
Was
is
that Paolo?
there, so I guess my last question would be, do you have, is there a process that you want to take as far as looking at assessment rate increases? Some of the other boards have asked me to come with some scenarios and show them kind of the impact, the dollar impact, depending on the percentage increase. I'm happy to do that for you as well, if that will be helpful in the discussion. I'm just looking for some direction so that I know how to approach that.
My concerns are for equity, apropos our payers, our taxpayers. That we in Penn 2 seem to have more capital built up than other districts, and if and when we get merged into the urban district, are we going to be paying for their projects with our taxpayers' money? So I'm going to be hesitant about increasing the the rates for my taxpayers because of the balance of, shall we say, among the districts.
So are you thinking then that you do want to consider drawing down some of that fund balance for the upcoming budget? Is that?
That's my initial reaction.
Okay, thank you. Mary
I
Helen, I
agree.
saw you start to say something.
No, I agree with Val. The concept, and I've always jokingly said, and I tease Tanny about this, we don't want to pay for your services, or we don't want to be charged for your services, or, and I think that was in very, very early conversations about the merging of the districts, that we would spend down our balance to protect any rate increases to property owners. And so I think we've supported that, but I would like to see, because the impact, and if let's say we increase their rates I'm just making this up, 5%, but also that would be in addition to the GO bond passing and rate increases there. So it would be sort of a not double whammy, but it would be 2 rate increases separate from each other. If there's any way to convey that, if we raise it 5% and the GO bond raises it, I don't remember the numbers. I'm kind of blurry.
It's kind of it would be 2 separate things, so Mary Helen, because we
Right,
can't
but
issue
it would
the
be-
GO bond right now.
But if I were a renter living in a house of a landowner, I would be charged for not only the property tax assessment and then later the GO bond. And so if we're adding to that burden of, like Val said, the people that live paycheck to paycheck in rental properties, or let's say in the condominiums in Bridgeton, their rates are all going to increase because the owners aren't going to absorb that. And so it would increase with our assessment, and then it would increase with the GO bond, and those combined might be cause some big problems for renters.
Looks like Karen has a question.
Yeah, I do. I'm looking at my tax assessment right now, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly are we as property owners in Penn 2 charged? And I can see one item that says Peninsula number 2 drainage, and I'm charged $175. And then another one says
That's
East
our
Sonoma
assessment.
County and water, soil and water for $35.
That's a different district. That's not us. We're just the
I'm
Peninsula
charged
2.
for it.
Yes, because it's a different district. It's a soil and water conservation district. They are a different district from Penn 2.
Well, still, the combined total is $205, $210 for a year's worth of protection. Even if we raise our rates in Penn 2, it's not a lot. I mean, our house, whatever is assessed at, is astronomical amount of money. Our taxes were over $10,000 for property taxes, which I think is huge. But of that, barely $200 is charged for Penn 2 expenses. So even raising it 10% isn't going to raise it much money. Am I correct, or am I thinking incorrectly?
You know,
Your
it
bill's
varies
smaller than mine
by,
is.
it varies by product, by property.
Well, I'm
Um,
just thinking as a homeowner.
Yes.
So, this is getting into really a very complex area, because as we raise the rates, our compression rate may go from the 13.6 up
Yep.
towards 20. And therefore, the properties that are under compression, they get kind of I wouldn't call it a free ride. They've hit the limit. And one of the things that has occurred within our district that is a hopeful change is because the property that used to be the horse racetrack is now much more valuable. The compression rate in total for our district has gone down.
Mhm.
And therefore, when we start to look at what we can expect to have as yield from the existing rate, it's going to be a little bit better than it
Yes.
was in 2021. So all these are things that, as we look at, is it a 2% increase or a 2% decrease, or do we take it out of the operating reserve? I'm going to be looking for Lori and her staff to be able to really give us some insights on where those breakpoints are.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you, Eric, for the wisdom, because I had that same question about compression, and some of the port property changed from either being compressed or not compressed, and what the impact of that would be on the whole. That was I said $400,000 because I didn't get it out. Jim corrected me and said 480,000, but that amount of money that was termed missing, and I think I explained in an email that I didn't get the whole conversation because I had to leave to participate in a call with my doctor. So, and Eric's point that all the Amazon property that is now not compressed, that was because of the ownership of the racetrack and the park. Anyway, that impact is how that adds to our revenue. Maybe we don't have to increase the, hit reserves, or, how that would affect how the less compressed property affects the bottom line in what money we need. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Eric said it much better, but
I can answer that. So we're projecting about a $60,000 additional revenue because of that reduction in compression this year. So it certainly helps. The 400 or the 480 that you're talking about, Mary Helen, is on MCDD, and that's two properties with the port. And I presented that information to MCDD, this week as well. I feel like I've been talking a lot this week. So if you want to see a copy of those slides and my notes so that you can read through what I said about that situation and where we're at with it, I'm happy to send that out to you.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And just one update on both the county and the port are working with us to understand what happened. And the port, when this happened, I don't remember, Lori, 10 years ago or something, the port reached an agreement with the district to provide direct funding. So we're not done yet. And then last, Multnomah County has installed a new software system to collect and generate all these taxes. And we think there may be potential challenges with individual properties as they're starting up that new system, which is reasonably typical. So we're hopeful, and we're grateful to our partners for being open-minded and trying to help us understand it. And in particular, the port wants to make sure they pay their fair share, and they're being really great partners.
Absolutely.
Well, I like your political, some of that language escapes me, but we think too, and we're hopeful for potential increases. The Multnomah County tax logs were a nightmare with the invitations, and that's a whole nother discussion on another meeting. But even the Multnomah County tax assessor office's staff people say it's driving them nuts and it's taken up so much of their time and the software, et cetera. So anytime you deal with software and changes to major organizations and numbers, you can only expect that. You know, it's almost as bad as Y2000 going to Y2000 transfer for software that people did. And Lori, I very appreciate you talking a lot and explaining things because it's helping me understand. I don't have the mind of that Eric has, and so he brings up topics and then you're able to clarify them. So for me, it's been really beneficial, and keep talking. I mean,
Thank you. I'm glad it's helping. Keep asking if it doesn't make sense, and I'll keep talking.
And your job as supervisors is to ask these questions. Again, we've got nothing to hide. We have all the documentation, and if there are policies you all want to change, we're open to working with you on that. And again, your questions are welcome. We know you have an obligation to your neighbors to keep track of the bugs. We want to help you with that.
Did just this is a little bit off topic, but our request, my request is, do we need to make a formal motion about that check register request for
We
contracts?
provided it, and we
Oh,
can
no, I
provide
saw,
some
and it
for-
was like, it was July through November, but
We're
Yeah,
catching you up, and then with your financial reports going
Okay.
forward, we'll just make
Okay.
sure that you get the month's check register so that you're seeing
oh,
that.
great. Thanks for
Yep.
making it easy. I didn't know if we had to go through some.
no
Yeah,
trouble.
Thanks to Angel for pulling that together quickly.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
Mr.
I haven't had a
President?
chance to look at it. I've had a million other things to be doing that. But I will. I have probably 60 pages of stuff that Jim and Wendy sent me, so I really appreciate it. But and I'm keeping Staples supplied with my money by buying papers. That's great.
Good. Well, and if there's a better way for us to share that with you, let us know, and we'll do our best to accommodate.
My whole other story is somehow have a backup system that can't be changed on you, because I was backing up to an external hard drive, and with a MSN 365 update, they changed it to a OneDrive backup, but didn't tell me and didn't give me the option to change that option. So all my files flew out into space, and they're trying to find them now. And so I think I said in my email to somebody, I'm advocating for a typewriter and a copy machine. Days.
Those were good days. Good luck with that.
Yeah, well, more boxes, more paper, more clutter in my house, but at least I'll be able to refer to things because my memory's escaping me now with older age. And if I don't have the paper copy and the files fly off into space, I have nothing. But then I don't have to be responsible for it. So that's my little speech.
Mr. President, would you be open to us moving into the executive session? A motion to move?
Are you finished, Lori? Before we go
Yes.
into executive session, before and lose more staff members, I would like to pass on a comment from one of our neighbors who is indicating that there's a particular problem at those campers on 6th Street, just north of the drainage ditch, I believe that's where it is, next to the bus parking lot. She says that that they're polluting the water, that they're dumping stuff into the ditch. So anyway, she asked us to pass that information on to you folks to see if there needs to be something done about that. Other than that, if there are no objections, do we have the text for executive session?
Mr. Chair,
put down-
I see it.
yeah, there you go.
Okay. Any objection to doing that? To proceed executive session, the board will convene in executive session for the purpose of discussing confidential information and legal advice exempt or otherwise public disclosure under both federal and state law. 5 U.S.C. 552 and ORS 192.345 through 3355 and 660 and ORS 40.225.